Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread with Rivaaj Maharaj, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I wanted to talk about a report on Sky News regarding an e-biker that has been sentenced following the death of a 91-year-old grandparent. So without further ado, let's get into it. I've come across an article on Sky News regarding an e-biker that has been sentenced after killing a great-grandfather of 91 for riding on the pavement in Kent. So this article goes on to talk about how an e-bike rider was sentenced after killing a great-grandfather of 91, and apparently this e-bike rider was found to have been riding on a pavement in Kent, which then led to the accident. Now, before I get into the article, this is something I've been going on about for years, since the introduction of these scooters, these electric scooters and electric bicycles. They've now, electrifying these vehicles has now put them in the same category as mopeds and motorcycles. Now, I ride a motorcycle, and if I ride my 1000cc on the pavement, or I ride on the road without the proper attire, namely the helmet at least, I can be stopped by the police and given a fine. Yet, these electrified bicycles and scooters are allowed to ride on the road, on the pavements, without, with the riders not using the appropriate headgear at least, without any consequence. They're not taxed. I have to pay a road tax. These people riding these bikes do not have to pay any road tax. They're not regulated in any way. The police turn a blind eye to a lot of what goes on. And I often say, they are endangering the lives of the elderly, and they're endangering the lives of the very young. Mums pushing buggies on the pathway are at the mercy of these menace as they, hop from the pavement onto the road, back onto the pavement, just to avoid traffic lights, just to make a delivery time, and riding at breakneck speeds. While Sadiq Khan is getting the public to drive at 20 mile an hour in these zones, his electric bikes that he's introduced, this riding scheme, this embrace towards Europeanism, seems to allow these riders to do whatever they please, whilst the legal taxpayer, the legal motorcycle rider, the legal car driver who is taxed, who has to have an MOT, they're the ones being hit with all these fines. And this was a recipe for disaster, and it was a recipe for, this was an inevitability waiting to happen. So let's have a look at what this article has to say. E-bike rider sentenced after killing great-grandfather 91 on pavement in Kent. The conviction of Clifford Cage for manslaughter is believed to be the first of its kind linked to cycling on the pavement. Cycling on the pavement should not even be a thing. Legally, you should not be allowed to ride on the pavement. The pavement is there for pedestrians. Introducing scooters and bicycles to that, and allowing them to continue, because the police, they can't be bothered. You see it day in, day out. The Met driving past, seeing people riding bicycles on the pavement, riding these scooters on the pavement, electric scooters and bicycles at breakneck speeds, weaving in between pedestrians. I just don't understand how it can't be policed. There's just no willingness to want to police these activities. And as a result, you're putting people's lives in danger. But once again, the average British citizen, means nothing to the police, means nothing uh, to law enforcement, means nothing to the mayor's office, because according to the way our government is run, we British citizens mean the least. Let's bring more people in, unskilled labor in, give them jobs that require these e-bikes and e-scooters to get around. Let's give them 0-hour contracts. Let's pay for them to be housed. And then let's also allow them to earn incomes in excess of 3 to 5 grand a month, where that money is going abroad, whilst the average Brit is struggling to make ends meet. Again, just doesn't make sense. These policies are crippling to the country, crippling to the population of this country, the law abiding, tax paying citizens of this country. So, yeah, good luck. You've now allowed the death of this man. How many other incidents go unreported? I don't know. But the article further says a man who struck and killed a 91-year-old great grandfather while riding his electric bike on the pavement has been given a suspended sentence for manslaughter. It shouldn't have even been a suspended sentence. The guy should be thrown in jail. He's on the pavement riding an e-bike. It should end there. Clifford Cage, 50, from Rochester, Kent, received a jail term of 15 months suspended for 2 years at Maidstone Crown Court on Wednesday after the collision in the town on 6 July 2023. The Crown Prosecution Services believes the case is the first of its kind for a manslaughter conviction linked to cycling on the pavement. The court heard Jim Blackwood was taking his buns out on City Way when he was struck. He was taken to hospital, but his health deteriorated and he died 3 months later on 13th of October. During sentencing, Judge Julian Smith said the Army veteran suffered significantly in his final months. Following this case, Cage and Mr. Blackwood's daughter, Christine White, hugged in the courtroom. She said it was a historic judgment which has a wider impact, that cyclists can no longer endanger pedestrians with impunity, adding that electronic bikes have made walking in public spaces dangerous to the point of becoming a lottery. The court heard that Cage told police he had 2 near misses with cars on City Way and so began cycling on the pavement instead. On the day of the crash, he said he was not pedaling mad and told officers he did not see Mr. Blackwood, describing how he stepped out from behind a bush and had no time to stop. Following the incident, Cage stayed on the scene and called 999 and did express genuine remorse, the court heard. Cage initially denied manslaughter but later pleaded guilty in October last year. The court also heard family statements from Blackwood's wife, Hanny, who said her husband had served in Malaya and Northern Ireland but was killed outside his front door. Meanwhile, Christine White described the huge emotional toll of her father's death, adding she generally feels angry all the time. Defending Danny Moore, Casey said Cage was a decent human being who stayed at the scene and did what he could to help. Yeah, nobody's arguing that he's a decent human being. Nobody's arguing that he feels threatened riding a bicycle on the pavement. The ramifications are different. He should not have been on the pavement. The pavement is for pedestrians. Now, him being on the pavement is one thing. You continuously see these Uber and Deliveroo riders, on the pavement. You continuously see them riding at breakneck speeds trying to make deliveries. And, it's just become the norm. It's been allowed. The public have now become desensitized to it because the police don't give a toss about what's going on. The council doesn't give a toss. As long as there's money coming in from from the pockets of coming into the pockets of these politicians from these these companies, it just doesn't matter. The British public are the least of anybody's concerns, and I see it day in day out, every day without fail. it is insane. These young kids walking, young children, preschool age kids on the pavement, walking with their parents, being pushed in buggies. These elderly, you see the terror on their face. They're terrified. But this behavior is continuously perpetuated. Cyclists have been, and these e-cyclists, the cyclists in general, these scooter, scooter riders, they've been, allowed to ride with impunity. You've created this elite where, the cyclists seem to feel that the road belongs to them. We were in a car yesterday trailing behind somebody riding one of these Boris bikes up a hill, and the guy just refused to move. He rode in the center of the lane, dragged traffic for miles, and apparently it's his right to do so. The police do nothing. The law does nothing. The councils do nothing. So, if you put in place measures, if the police come down, if these sentences are handed out and they are heavy-handed on these culprits, then you'll find a slow tilt towards conforming to the law. But, as you see, nobody is bothered to enforce the law. And that has resulted in this death. So I think everybody should share a portion of the blame for this man's death. Right from the police force to the mayor's office, everybody. Because you allow this scenario to perpetuate day in, day out on our streets, on our pavements in London. So while you want to make zones safe for schools and get cars to be driving at 20 mile an hour and legal motorcyclists to be riding at 20 mile an hour, and you get penalized for every single thing that you do or you don't do, you've got these other people just riding willy-nilly on the pavements. And they're allowed to do so. So how is that now making London safe? This is the result. Defending Danny Moore, Casey said Cage was a decent human being who stayed at the scene and did what he could to help. He continued, the knowledge his actions have caused the death of another human being is something he will carry with him for the rest of his life. Mrs. White, who is now a full-time carer for her mother since her father's death, is calling for the government to rethink the minimum age requirement to ride e-bikes, raising from 14 to 16. The judge also ordered Cage to carry out 15 days of rehabilitative activity requirement and 180 hours of unpaid work. Yeah, it's, while I think this is a step in the right direction, I believe it's a little too late. I think that in order for this to be tackled and for this menace to be removed from our streets, I think it's imperative that the government acts a lot more sooner and with a lot more of an aggressive stance in terms of enforcing the law, or you're just going to see this continue, because there is not a day that goes by where these riders are on the pavement, looking left and right at a red traffic light and then progressing to cross. And it's like one law for them and one law for the rest of society, or the drivers on the road, the legal drivers on the road. So it's it's a welcome decision. However, a lot more needs to be done to prevent this type of death being happening, because you don't need to be a genius to know that this was going to be an outcome at some point. Everybody is jostling for that little space. Mums with buggies, the buses, the cars, the motorcycles, the mopeds, the delivery drivers, and everybody else on top of that. And they all the pedestrian is being now hemmed in. You walk through the shopping center and you've got to look left and right in a space that was vehicle free for for ages. Suddenly, delivery drivers are and mopeds are zooming through there. E-scooters are zooming through there. People with Uber and Deliveroo bags, on bicycles and motorized bicycles and motorized scooters zooming through there, and it's only a matter of time before somebody's kid is dead. So I want to thank you for spending time with us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, as it helps our channel to grow and it helps us with the algorithm.